You're listening to SuperPower Mommas on the SuperPower Up podcast, the show that embraces the art of soulful parenting.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the SuperPower Mama Show. I'm so excited that you are here again, and I am your host, Laura Greco. Today, I have a wonderful, lovely guest, Courtney Harris, and she is joining me from all the way out in Texas. She's a lovely woman that I met through networking in a parenting group. She is a life coach for teens and parents. She is actually assisting teens in finding their voice and growing their confidence and thriving. And she encourages the parents of these teens to maintain their own self-care, which also creates an environment of balance and an opportunity to problem solve in their parenting. So welcome, Courtney. I'm so excited you're here. And we are talking on the topic of building confidence in families. So welcome, Courtney.
Hi, Laura. Thanks for having me. I'm so excited about the show and so excited about the ways that you're sharing these great resources with families.
Well, I'm so happy to have you here. You know, I've had the opportunity to experience some of your work through our networking. So I'm really excited to have you on this topic that we're talking about building confidence in families, because it really seems like that is important to your work, as well as to all of our work in the parenting and child field. But before we begin, what is your superpower, Courtney?
So my superpower, what first came to mind when I heard that idea and that question is my gift for advocating for teens and for parents of teens. I think that our society is often describing teens as troubled or, as hormonal, or I'm sure as you're listening, anyone that's listening can come up with a list of words that we tend to push onto or use to describe teens. And I think they have a pretty bad rap. So my superpower is to help people, teens, parents, and society at large to reframe that idea and to really get into a mindset of cherishing the gifts that our teens have and of just loving on them, affirming them. And I really believe that this way of connecting with teenagers could transform so much in our communities and in our society at large. So that's my superpower. It's a pretty big mission, but I'm starting just with loving the teenagers that I get to work with and the teenagers in my life, like my nieces and nephews, and sharing this love and passion with everyone that I get the chance to talk with.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love that. I love that you're reframing the attitudes and even the labeling, I would say. There's a lot of labeling that's out there now. And I love that you take that and reframe it into something that's positive and workable in families.
Oh, thank you. Yes. And that's exactly what it is, right? I'm not saying that, the teen years are easy breezy. I'm saying, yeah, they are challenging. And there's a pathway to finding more peace and ease and really enjoying them as both the teen and as the parent on a much deeper level. So, yeah.
Mm. And, I think about that and your superpower here. How do you see this assisting of the parents and their children? Like, what can you say to that and how that really, what's the transformation that you see happening in families that you're working with that approach?
Yeah, the biggest, I guess, end product or it's not really ever an end product because we're always on the journey, but the transformation is deeper connection, deeper understanding. I think that anytime that I work with a family and I get a sincere head nod from a parent of like, oh, yes, I'm kind of, that when I see the parent understanding and having maybe even a bit more compassion or a bit more patience with their teenager, like that's the transformation. likewise, when I see that from the teen, when I hear a teen explaining, oh, I understand why my mom was worried about this, or I understand why this is a big deal to my family, and they're kind of they're gaining a perspective, they're gaining a broader perspective and starting to understand where their parents are coming from. Really, what's happening is that they're both meeting each other where they are. So parents are meeting their teens where they are, and teens are beginning to understand where their parents are and what the role is that they may be playing. And of course, this doesn't always mean that both parties are doing it perfectly, right? That each one may have to learn how to set boundaries and advocate for their needs and things like that. But that's the journey, right? It's the opening of communication, the opening to understanding. And that's the transformation that I have the pleasure of witnessing when I'm working with families.
Which is beautiful. I from my perspective, I have always, I raised 4 daughters of my own, and I've studied early childhood education and experienced other families and their being raised. And I think that one of the things that really can help families, because our audience may have younger children than teens right now, is building something even prior to coming into these teen years. Would you like to say a little more about that?
Certainly. Yeah, great point. It's really never too early or too young to begin the bonds of open and connected communication, and that's exactly what it is. It's taking the mindset of a generous mindset of knowing that your children and your teens have agency in their lives and in their family lives and in their communities. And yes, it starts with things like doing chores and being able to speak up about how they're feeling and to express their needs. And that ripples out, of course, to ways that they're maybe serving in their community through a student council or being active in the church, and really beginning to nurture and encourage the ways that children and teens can take responsibility and be, as I said, active agents in their lives and in their family and community lives. So that's definitely a piece of it, as well as parents giving a lot of attention and time and patience to open conversations, to being willing to answer questions, or to even say, hey, I don't have the answer, but being willing to allow your child to ask questions about the world and about life, and ensuring that it's not always met with advice or with concrete answers, but also inviting the child to explore what they believe the possibilities are. So again, that taps into the agency, but it's also a communication tool, a communication skill. So for example, if a child's asking a question like, what does love mean? You can respond with, well, what does it mean to you? So this type of opening space for questions, but also allowing for an organic process of discovering together, and not treating the role of parenting as the sole expert of the family, or of the sole expert of what life is and means. And I don't believe parents ever just intend to take that stance, but we can get busy and it can be easier to give an answer. So I guess I'm sharing this as an invitation to not be afraid of not having the answer, and to let your child consider their possibilities.
I love that. Courtney, what brought you into this work in the first place?
So I have been a teacher for 10 years, and my work in the classroom has been so transformational in my own journey. I thought going out of college that I was going to take a break from college for a bit, and I was going to try something new. Well, it turned out I decided to try teaching, and I never went back to what I was originally going to study, which was speech and language pathology, to be a speech therapist. But I guess I always had the idea of working with children. And again, it's interesting the way speech and language pathology has to do with communication. So yeah, my time in the classroom just brought me it gave me the opportunity to connect with students on a daily basis, to see their personal growth throughout a year, even throughout a semester, just to be able to witness them growing and to be in a position of affirming them, supporting them, asking them these questions that I encourage parents to ask. It was really a valuable experience for me, so transformational, and every year just kept propelling me into the next. But I also realized that as a highly sensitive, empathic introvert, that it was a lot of energy, and that I was really excited to take this work into a smaller setting, one-on-one and small group setting. And so that's the way that I began to conceptualize my work as a life coach for teenagers.
That's beautiful. Wow.
Thank you. It was pretty organic, which is exciting.
Yeah, and I love that you noticed that thread of communication and connection is something that you were already on a path of all along. And I love how you beautifully weave that thread of the fact that, our teens, of course, there's an approach, but actually it starts when they're very young. And it's not that it's ever too late when they're teenagers, but it's great to have that foundation. It just creates more ease and flow in the family, understanding of each other,
Totally. Yes. I think the work that I do can start younger than the teen years. The types of communication strategies and everything I share on my blog and my writing, I gear it towards teenagers, but truly it's applicable for any pretty much school-age child, most of the topics and most of the strategies. The one thing that I see being different in the teen years is that the teenage brain is truly geared towards looking outside of the self, looking to their social world, to their peers, and there's a high motivation to see what's going on the outside. And so that is why it does also become a great time for teenagers to have other people in their support system that are not family members, and maybe not even the sort of I don't mean to say forced, but I guess you don't get to choose your teacher. You have to go to school and you have these teachers, but to have someone that they, in a sense, get to choose to work with, whether it be someone like me as a coach or a therapist, it's truly very healthy for teenagers to have this non-familial mentor or partner for their journey. And it's not to say that it diminishes the relationship with their parents. It's enhancing it. And it's also teaching them that as they're becoming their individual self, that they do need to advocate for themselves, and they do need to build their own support systems and to find the people that they can rely on to process their life or get new ideas or explore the world.
Love it, Courtney. We have to take a short break. But before we do, Courtney, could you share with everyone listening where they can find you?
Yes. So pretty simple. It's CourtneyHarrisCoaching.com. You can also search Facebook for Courtney Harris Coaching, as well as Instagram, Courtney Harris Coaching.
Beautiful. Well, you've been listening to the Courtney and I discussing the confidence in families. We'll take a short break and we'll be right back, and we're going to dive deeper into the parent connection in this whole process. So thank you for listening.
Are you here to change the world? Do you talk about things like vibration, frequency, awakening, and consciousness? Are you pretty sure you have superpowers? The SuperPower Net is unlike normal coaching programs and conscious communities. We provide training, intuitive guidance, peer-to-peer learning, intensive one-on-one coaching, and a high vibrational network of people just like you. When you join the net, you get 24/7 access to a collaborative group of people who support you as you master your personal power and unlock your superpowers. If you're ready to use your superpowers to change the world, then join the SuperPower Net today. Visit superpowerexperts.com/thenet to learn more.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm so excited that we are having this beautiful discussion with Courtney Harris. We are talking on the topic of building confidence in families, and you're listening to SuperPower Mommas. So, Courtney, before we went on the break, we had a lot of discussion about the kind of work you do as an overview of the parent-child progress and through the teen years, as well as applying this before they even reach teenage years, if that's possible. Because whoever we grow and we learn, and who knows when we stumble upon information that can really assist us, and it's just never too late. But you do assist parents too, and I wanted to dive a little bit deeper into that. When I think of a mom who's become a mom, she may come from different backgrounds as far as working or a life mission that she wants to do, and she comes into this really wanting to be that wonderful, great parent. And I wanted to ask you, from your perspective in working with the children and the parents, how important is it that a mom also maintains her autonomy in her relationship in the family unit?
Yeah, this question is so big and so important. So I'm really glad that you're asking. And actually, as I was working with a parent client just yesterday, she was talking about the conflict in her mind of herself as an individual and herself as a mother, and that these are kind of the two biggest roles that she carries around and shifts between, but really they're so intermixed and intermingled, and it's sometimes hard to decide where one stops and the other begins. So I believe this is super common. So for anyone listening, I've heard this before, you are not alone in this experience. And yes, having an understanding and naming what it is that is truly important for you as an individual outside of the scope of your motherhood can be a massive tool and can be a true source of empowerment and motivation for your life, which then of course carries over and influences your parenting and your work as a mother. So for me, one of the core kind of pillars of the work that I do with parents is focusing on self-care. Mm-hmm. And I know that this is definitely like a hot topic and a big word that we're using a lot. And I think it's because we're not all practicing it enough. We're not all doing it enough yet. And so it's still this conversation that we're trying to figure out the ways that we can take care of ourselves that nourish us and therefore refuel us to do everything that we want to do in our lives, whether it be a careers, mothering, a relationship with a partner, etc. And so, yes, one of the things I do is I help mothers create a plan for their self-care. And self-care can be the 5 minutes that you drink your coffee alone on your back porch each morning. It can be, getting a notebook where each day you make a list of 5 things that you're grateful for. It can be turning off your phone and eating your lunch for 20 minutes in silence. Any of these small ways that you can stop and create a moment of being mindful and being with yourself. That's self-care to me. And these small acts are what can encourage the mother to understand that she is her own self, her own powerful being, next to and with her motherhood, with that role. And so, yes, I think it's massively important to nurture it. I understand, not from my own personal experience, but from hearing as a coach, that this is challenging work. And so this is one way that I support moms on creating a plan and following through as, an accountability partner for them.
Yeah. And as women, we tend to give much more than we are willing to give to ourselves. We're always reaching out to be that, nurturer, service type person towards our family. However, when we're not taking care of ourselves and maintaining that autonomy, we are definitely not coming to the position of a mother with a full bucket, so to speak. We don't. Right. It's harder to give when you're feeling distressed yourself.
Yeah, and one thing that is kind of an element of social justice work, I would say, in my work, is that a lot of the expectation for women to be caregivers and nurturers stems from a patriarchal system. And many of us would love to continue being nurturers. And it's a beautiful thing, the way that we nurture, and we don't have to give it up. but we can also know that we don't have to do it alone, and that we can be in partnership. And whether that be with a romantic partner, a husband, a wife, whoever, it can be maybe a friend. It can be relying on childcare or other supports. But the idea is knowing that we don't have to do it alone. Moms don't have to do it alone. And that asking for help, reaching out, and spending a few hours away from your children is not something that is wrong or bad or harmful to them. And, letting that be a source of power and strength for a woman to understand that we can change it up, and we can do something different than we maybe have been taught by society or by our family, or, these other notions that have been passed down from generation to generation.
Yeah. Yeah. And we can see how this all really contributes also to the child.
Yes.
Who is not just because mom and parents in general are feeling more available because they are taking care of themselves, and then therefore feeling more balanced and patient, and so forth. But also it sets an example, doesn't it?
Totally. Yeah. Great explanation there, that no matter what, as adults, we're always modeling for children different possibilities.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's really what the key word is, possibilities. We're not locked into any one thing. However, the goal, of course, is to create a harmonious or the ability to reconnect with the problem solving that allows for harmonious union. Because I believe that families, of course, and I'm sure everyone here agrees, that families are a foundation of community, society, and globally. The family is the nucleus and foundation, but it really starts in the home. Any kind of transformation is going to start there first. Yeah. Yeah. So I have another question for you. When you're in your work, you're likely, focused on the families that you're working with. However, Courtney, how do you see this as affecting more, a bigger picture, like a more global vision? I know a lot of moms and dads today are very interested in a transformational approach to life in general, of stepping into new possibilities and empowering, basically a world that's different from where we came from. Mm-hmm. But how do you see this work you're doing as contributing to that?
Yeah, so I have a framework that I use that is something that I teach to clients, but it's also something that I use as a tool for kind of figuring out sometimes the next steps that I will present to my clients or present to the clients that I'm working with. And what I call this philosophy and framework is connected hearts. And connected hearts is like a ripple effect. So there's 3 layers, and we start from the center. So I think of it actually as 3 concentric hearts. Of course, I love hearts. And so the first heart, the inner heart, is the connection to self. And this means connecting, to understanding our needs, our desires, naming the parts of us that feel important and prominent, figuring out our preferences. It's really the self-awareness, and even begins to kind of turn into some of the self-advocacy piece. And then the second layer is the connection to others. And this includes connecting to family members, connecting to friends, connecting to maybe even people like our teachers or people that we see at church or the grocery store, connecting with others. And becoming aware of the way that we, again, are agents in these relationships. We have responsibility. We have power in these relationships. Power meaning not power over, but power to co-create with one another. And so that second layer is really all about understanding that we work with others. We have to be aware of others and their needs and their preferences. We have to figure out how to fit our needs and preferences into these relationships. And then the third layer is community. And so this is, how do these gifts that we have and the ways that we know how to build relationships then serve our greater communities, being our neighborhoods, our schools, our churches, our mosques, our, wherever we go in the world, whether it be political organizing groups or anything, right? Any way that we're meeting with other people in our community, that's another opportunity for us to connect to ourselves in a way that we can bring our gift into the community spaces, and we can also hear from and connect with other people and their gifts. And so that's when it becomes truly transformational on a broader level. But we can't go into these communities and be our truly effective and loving and kind and intentional selves if we don't start with that core of knowing who we are.
Right.
So this philosophy that I've developed is basically my vision, right? My vision of healing, my vision of us living together harmoniously as families and as communities. And so that's the work that I see happening from the micro level all the way out to the macro. And it's just small growth on a daily basis that gets us there. And I hold hope and hold faith that the work that I do each day or each session with a client equates to, adding to that ripple out to our communities.
Love that. Because, often it's maybe overlooked a little bit of how very effective it is, the parenting component and all the things that we just, spoke about for the last several minutes. About our self-care and our autonomy, and then also respecting that same for our children, their own autonomy as well as their self-care and safety and so forth. How that all really, when that's happening in a family, and say you're raising 1 to 5 children, now that child or those children go out and they pattern that and maybe even build on those concepts and create even more change. When that begins to happen, what do we see but a ripple effect? So parents may want to go out and change the world in some way. However, it can start right there in their home. On that level, they are creating a difference.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, beautifully said.
And honestly, I think about too the opportunities, say, for volunteering or, creating some experience that gives back to a community and allowing the children to be a part of that contribution is so, it's I did some research on families and what components are really important. And one of those was being able to, a spiritual background of some kind is important, but also being able to really contribute yourself in that way.
Totally. Yes. And I use the word agency a lot, and the word contribution is really striking me too. That's exactly, it's really about contributing and knowing that it's not about people doing for us or to us, but that we can contribute too. And we have gifts to bring and share with our communities and with our families and all of that. So I love that.
Yeah. And as a soul language practitioner, I teach and help people discover their missions and, why they're here. And when you think about the beauty of that, all energies actually come from one divine being, right? So, and then they all spread out to all of us. And just, if we think about the beauty that each person reminds us as part of divine, it's just like a whole picture of beauty.
That's true.
Yeah. Look at it that way.
Yeah. It's like the cosmic puzzle that it's never going to be finished, but where you can always add pieces. Like it's always growing, and we're always connecting and building these new connections, and we'll never stop building, but we can always keep moving in the direction of building.
Exactly. And the challenges that arise, the chafing that happens is all a matter of process of growing. If we can view it as a gift rather than a blame, like you said, blaming or whatever, but you view it as a gift for growth, it makes such a difference. Beautiful. Well, we're coming to the close, and I always like to ask this question, so I'll ask it of you, Courtney. Out of all the things that we discussed today, if our listeners could go away with one point, what would you like to say? That you are not alone. So the days that feel super challenging, you're not the only one feeling like that. And beyond that
it's okay to ask for help in those moments, that there are friends or family or professionals that are ready to offer support, or just to offer a listening ear, to offer a hug, and that asking for help is admirable, that it is not something to be ashamed of.
Not at all. In fact, the recognition of that is the first step in progress towards love, really.
Yes.
And that's what we're all striving for, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So thank you so much, Courtney, for coming on the show. And I want to thank all our listeners for being here and listening to this beautiful discussion between Courtney and myself. And I would like to remind you, till next time, to go out and love yourself for the treasure that you are. You may not know this, but you do have what it takes. You want to make a difference in the world? It all starts in our own hearts and in our own homes. So own your superpowers and go out and be you. Thank you.
Are you ready to discover your superpowers? Go now to superpowerexperts.com and take the Superpower Quiz today.